as we continue to preview the teams in Region 11 for this upcoming 2022 football season. We have a chance to talk to Travis Cox, the head coach of the Ridgeline Riverhawks, reigning champions, and had a heck of a year last year, and to continue to have a lot of support for their program as well. Coach, thanks for your time today, and as we get to know this team this year.
Yeah, good to be here. Happy to talk some football, so thanks for having me on.
So for starters, I mean, every coach every year has to replace key guys. They graduate, they move on. But it seems like Ridgeline has been affected seemingly more than most with the talent that you had last year that helped get you to that great success that you had a season ago. So that's probably one of the biggest questions that I've been getting as people talk to me about the high school football here in the Valley is, what is Ridgeline going to look like after so many key guys have graduated?
Yeah, and I'm getting the same question, and good question, obviously. So, we got to replace a lot of our, skilled guys, quarterback, running back, receiver. So, all over the field we're having to replace guys. But what kind of gives us hope, and, I've always been a believer that you don't win games without a good O-line, and, we have three returners back over there. And I think that's kind of where we're going to hunker down and, try to win games with those guys up front.
So, Coach, I'm kind of curious. A lot of teams, after they win a championship, the next offseason, there's a lot of talk, trying to do the little things in terms of repeating, staying focused. I'm curious, obviously you're trying to do those things. Like, what are the things that you do with the team to try and reinforce those ideas, if that makes
we always – it doesn't matter what team we have, and, I've only been here for 2 years, but we've always kind of preached the same thing, and, practice and preparation and, try to play with some confidence. And so we always just drill that in our kids' head all the time. And, this year is a little bit different, whereas last year we could have been complacent because a lot of those guys had been playing. This year I haven't had to worry about, we've been there, done that, because we have a lot of new kids. So, they have the pressure on them to try to, carry on kind of what we've been doing the last couple of years. So they've been ultra-focused and want to work hard because it's their turn. And so that's kind of been, pretty good for us because we've had great kind of work ethic over the off-season.
As you've kind of worked in this off-season, and we've asked this of other coaches as well, and I think in your case, trying to find the best available players to fill holes that need to be filled, have you had to move players to different positions very much?
Well, last year we moved Jackson Olsen from quarterback to receiver. He ended up being a phenomenal receiver. But his natural position is quarterback, and so he's going to go back and play that. But other than him, pretty much everyone's kind of staying kind of where they've been playing. But, he's kind of the major one.
So you said Olsen's going to be playing quarterback?
Yeah, Jackson will be quarterback, yep.
Now, he's got a scholarship offer to Utah State as a wide receiver. Is that correct?
Yes, that is, yeah. He's a phenomenal athlete, but he's got a really good arm. So we're going to try to get the ball in his hands a lot. So that's, that's kind of our plan with him.
Yeah, I was kind of going to ask about that because I was wondering if he was going to play wide receiver and maybe incorporate him in other parts of the offense. But I guess if he's playing quarterback, are you going to try and run a lot of things through him, use him in the run game and maybe even, just try and use him as many places as possible?
Yeah, I think you always got to be careful with running quarterbacks. I'm not a big believer in running a quarterback a lot because they have to do so much for your team. So we'll spot kind of run him, but he's just such a phenomenal athlete, can make a lot of plays, in and outside of the pocket, good arms. So, we'll be a little bit different than we were last year. Last year we didn't run a quarterback at all. But we'll use Jackson a little bit different, but overall we still believe in the quarterback getting us in the right plays and getting the balls to the right guys, and then being the threat that he is, when he does have the ball in his hands. So that's kind of how we'll approach him.
So no Lamar Jackson style offense there with Jackson.
No, it will be more Lamar style than we were last year, but I wouldn't say he's going to be carrying the ball 20 times a game. I don't think that's healthy for a team.
Again, we're talking to Travis Cox, head coach of the Ridgeline Riverhawks, and as you've mentioned, you've only been a head coach for a few years. How is this year different maybe than the years past as you've getting ready for the upcoming season?
Yeah, so my career's been a little bit odd because the first year was COVID, and that was really hard, but I didn't know it was really hard because it was my first year. So now having gone through last year was, we were still kind of dealing with it, but I was with a group of kids I'd known for a really long time, so they were really easy to coach. And, this year's different in the sense that I'm having to get used to some new kids and kind of their personality because every team's different. So as far as that's concerned, it's been a little bit different. But as far as, like, kind of how our culture runs everything, our kids have been in it for now 3 years, and so practices and how we work and what we do is we haven't had to reinvent that. The kids are really good at, trying to get done the stuff that we need to get done. So that part of it's been pretty easy for us. So it's been fun, though, to get to know these kids in a different level than I have in the past.
And I guess kind of in addition to that, has your coaching staff been the same throughout, or have you had to make some changes there?
We're relatively the same, and that's, what's made it really good this year is, our D staff's now kind of been together for a couple years. And same with our offense. So what we want to get done, and having gone through, 2 seasons together, we're really on the same page now. Whereas, last year we were still trying to figure out exactly kind of how we wanted to do things. We had a couple new coaches last year, but for the most part, our staff's the same. And so that's made our off season much more efficient than we've been in the past.
So I believe you're returning like 4 guys on the front 7 on defense, and kind of like how you talked about, the offensive line, you return like 3 guys there. Are you feel like you're going to have to rely on those returners in the front 7, whereas you're replacing a lot of guys in the defensive backfield?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's where I would venture to guess most football coaches kind of start on the trenches. So yeah, O and D line are really important for us this year, and so yeah, we're looking to do some things up there. We got some guys that might play. We might play a few guys more both ways this year than we have in the past. So we're going to try to. We weren't very big last year up front, so I think we're going to try to add a little bit more size up there so we can kind of manage the line of scrimmage a little bit better.
Coach, when you look at your non-region schedule, it's an interesting mix of some higher schools, at least higher classification schools, a smaller school from Idaho, another school from Region 10. Who knows? That could be a playoff preview. When you put that schedule together, the non-region schedule, did you have a philosophy in mind about types of teams that you wanted to play, or just kind of whatever was available?
That's a good question. So I wanted to go after the best teams I could find that we could play. So I think going after Stansbury's been really good. Bonneville's always has been tough. So I kind of wanted to go after some tougher 5A schools. I think it kind of helps you as you get into region and state. So I wanted to go after them for sure. And then, the other two, I don't love having to go to St. George, but it is fun to play that region just because it's a pretty competitive region. You kind of get an idea of where you sit, after you play them. And Snow Canyon's got a really good team this year. So, yeah, I always want to try to play the best teams I can find. That's for sure the number one goal. The Idaho team, it took me a long time to find that game, so I just needed a game. So we took Idaho, and they were lucky enough to come up to our place this year so we could have another home game. So, but they're actually a really good team. I think they're 11-1 last year, and they do some different things on offense. So it'll be a good game for us.
So what's kind of the philosophy behind going after all these tough schools? Is it just playing the toughest so you can...
I just think you learn a lot when you go against, good, well-coached teams. You learn a lot about your team, where you're at, what you need to get better on. The most important thing for us is, our goal is always to try to win the last game. And sometimes you lose before that last game, but you need to figure out, what you need to work on, where you're good at, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. And I think you find that out better when you play good teams.
So as you mentioned, losing, is this team kind of mentally ready to lose? Because they didn't lose at all last year. So a lot of these kids may not have known what defeat tastes like.
Yeah, we're not mentally ready to lose, that's for sure. So I don't like to lose, so we're not thinking about that. If we do, we'll figure out when we get there, but we're not really thinking about that right now.
That's good. That's good.
That's a good mentality. I guess you just got to kind of figure out what happens when you lose. Obviously, you don't want the previous year to overshadow you. But 13-0. I mean, these kids kind of feel the pressure of not losing and keeping that winning streak going through a second year.
We don't really talk about it, and we really try to focus. I mean, it's kind of cliche-ish, but we really just focus on one practice at a time, and then when we get to game week, we focus on that game and trying to figure out what we do. And it's kind of has always been our approach, and we just try to get better each and every day. And hopefully, as you get to those last games, that you're kind of peaking at the right time. So we know it's a marathon; it's not a sprint. So we really don't try to get too far ahead of ourselves, and we don't think about last year. We've hardly even talked about it. So the only thing we really talk about is what we talked about before last season, and that is just kind of how we prepare. So,
Coach, I recall vividly your reaction when I asked you about RPI. You are not a fan, but as you put your schedule together, and I'm sorry to keep dwelling on the schedule, but RPI is a factor when you look at complete wins and losses. But has that changed your philosophy at all as you've been in this a little bit longer and seen how RPI works, or is it still just about scheduling the best teams for your team to get you ready for region play?
Yeah, I mean, last year we thought we had a really hard schedule, and it ended up not being great because Woods Cross was, when we scheduled Woods Cross back in the day, they were a really good team, and they didn't win a game last year. Bonneville, I think, ended up winning their region, but they had some losses. So I don't know. I just try to schedule good teams, and we won all of our games last year, and we were still number 2. The previous year, we lost one game, and that was to the number 1 team, and we were 4. So it's one of those things where it's something that's so out of your control, and you try to win all your games, and you just play who you got to play. And so I really don't, honestly, nowadays, I don't even really worry about the RPI. There's some parts that is good in the sense that it kind of matches up the best teams for the most part, but it's not a perfect science, and knowing how it works, I just don't worry about it anymore. So
that's fair enough.
So, Coach, I'm kind of curious. So you're coaching at a school that's been around for I think 6 years.
Yeah. And
you've got some schools around here. Logan's been around for I think over 100 years. I mean, I went to a school that was around for over 100 years now, and I think you're a Mountain Crest grad, so that school's been around a while. But you're playing at a school that hasn't really established maybe traditions, or at least the traditions that go on for decades. Yep. So what's it like for you coaching where you're establishing the tradition? I mean, you won the first football title last year for the school. What's it like for you to be the tradition maker at that school?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of unique, and it's really fun. So it's really fun to try to create excitement and an atmosphere where little kids want to come up and play. And so we try to create a culture of when you come to a football game on a Friday night, it's really fun, enjoyable, and there's, great atmosphere, and we win a lot of games. So that's kind of what it is, and it's hard to create culture if you don't win. And, before, the first little bit, they struggled, and, I think we've kind of figured out what it takes to win, and you can kind of see, the little communities kind of gravitating towards, what we're doing. I think we set a huge record in Little League football sign-ups this year by almost 50 kids. So it's really kind of exciting just to see the development of the younger kids coming in, and then our freshman groups are bigger. And so I think it's a credit to the older guys that have come through the program to kind of help establish it. But yeah, it's probably one of the funner things to get to do is to build your own traditions.
Travis Cox, head coach of the Ridgeline Riverhawks. I have just 2 quick more questions for you, Coach, and we'll let you go. But the first one, as Jason already alluded to, you graduated from Mountain Crest, and there's a number of the coaches in this region who are from the area, and just makes that even that much more interesting. What do you see this year in Region 11 and how that landscape looks for your region play?
I think our region's going to be really competitive this year. I think every team's kind of got some strengths, and I think every team's going to try to figure out a few things that they need to they don't know about. But, overall, top to bottom, I think it's going to be a pretty competitive region. And, it kind of makes, playing football in our valley and in our region really fun because everyone does know everyone. And when the games are competitive, it makes it that much funner. So I expect it to be a pretty competitive region each and every game. And, I think it's really going to be quite a fun year.
And then we were reminded the other day when we were talking to some of these other high school coaches, anybody on your roster that's getting interest from colleges? We already talked about Jackson. He's got an offer from Utah State. But any other guys on your roster?
Jake Alice, our left tackle who started since he was a sophomore. He got an offer from Southern Utah, and then he's got some bigger schools looking at him. So he's kind of one of the guys. Ashton McFarland's getting some looks. Owen Monk's getting a little bit of looks. So we're getting more looks than we actually did last year. So for as good as some of our kids were last year, it was a little bit quiet. So I don't know if it was none of the coaches could get out and see them. But things are kind of picking up a little bit more now.
Well, it's an exciting time of the year and exciting to see how this team builds off of all of its success from here we go. Dave Simmons and Nick Zollinger will be doing the play-by-play for Ridgeline on 104.5 The Ranch. We love those guys, and they have a lot of fun calling those games for Ridgeline. And excited to see how things play out this year, Coach, and wish you the best of luck.
All right, thanks for having me, and we appreciate all you guys do and supporting the sports in the Valley. So thank you.